So this is 24 Hours of UX. I'm Jesse. I'm in Geneva, Switzerland, along with Peter, who you just saw a moment ago. We are the instigators of this crazy and wild UX festival, which is going now, boy, I think we're in hour 10 or 11 already. So it's time for UX Kitchen. And it looks like you're in your kitchen. Is that possible?
Yes, I am.
Cool.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so if you can tell the world, over 1,100 people right now live watching this, you know, who you are, what you do, and I'll just leave the floor to you. If you have a question or anything, if there's anything, I'll still be lurking, as I mentioned, on the dry run. I'll be back if you need me. Okay?
Okay, so do we just kick it off?
You can kick it off. It's all yours. Since we're already 4 minutes after the hour, I'll leave it to you. Sound good?
Okay, sure.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. So, hi guys. My name is Njiri, Davigan Njiri. I am the UX lead at Africa's Talking. That is a firm in Kenya, a tech firm that deals with communication solutions. So we build payment and communication endpoints for developers across Africa. So we take care of all that. We make it easy to have, we abstract the telco process for when you're trying to build communication and payment endpoints for your product. Yeah. So has the J joined us? Sorry. Yeah, I'm trying to share my screen. Hello. Hi, Jesse.
Yeah, Rajay should be joining us.
There we go.
Yeah. Hi, Rajay.
All right, I'm trying to share my screen. How do I do that?
There at the bottom, you should see some icons. And it's the one with the desktop, sort of the monitor one.
Okay.
That should allow you to. Yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it. Great. So can you all see what I'm saying? Loading.
Yes.
Is that okay? Sure. All right. So I hope everyone is having a good time. Thank you to Jesse and Peter for putting together all this UX goodness for us. This has been pretty insightful. Thank you for AJ Wood for that Adobe XD walkthrough. I'm really gonna brush up my UI skills. All right, so welcome to UX for Business Strategy. We are going to be doing this with Rajay Shah, and as I mentioned, I am the UX lead at Africa's Talking here in Africa. We are currently in Nairobi and about 15 other markets in Africa. And I'm also the founder of UX Kitchen, which is the community that brings you this goodness today. Okay, so let me tell you a bit about UX Kitchen Nairobi. So UX Kitchen Nairobi was started, interestingly, a year and 4 months ago. And it was initially meant to be like an intimate community. I didn't even think like UX was that big that people cared enough. So I thought, at max 20 people. Well, we are like 1,100 and something now and going strong. So I'm really grateful. This is a photo of us at the iHub in Nairobi. We used to meet every first Thursday of the month, pre-corona. But thanks to Jesse and Peter, but we can now do this thing, right? So the photo on the right is also like one of our visual recording, whereby an illustrator in Kenya called Nasho Mai, she like just takes notes for us. So whatever the speaker is saying, she just like draws it out so that it's easy for you to consume. And I just thought it was cool to put it in the slide. All right, so why UX for business strategy? We really thought about topics, guys. Like we thought about topics. But what's going on during this pandemic is that people are losing jobs, which is a bit sad. And that means loss of income. You know, people can't afford rent and just bare minimum lifestyle. So, but on the other positive side, what's going on is that people are coming up with businesses. So my cousin just started a pizza shop in his house, and he's just distributing pizza all over Nairobi, like as of the last 2-3 weeks. So that's another good thing that's happening around this time. So then how do we do business right around this time? How do we put UX at the center instead of it being an afterthought? How do we marry UX and business strategy? And I really hope that today we get to address that in this conversation. So as I mentioned, there's cloud kitchens coming up. You could literally learn how to make banana bread on the YouTube, which has become pretty popular. And you could sell it and make some money. So in Nairobi here, we have Jikoni Eats, where I've been baking a lot. I could literally just bake some local stuff and put it on Jikoni Eats, and someone will order, and that's pretty cool. We also have Shop Zetu, which is more on the fashion and style side of things. So we can see there, these are all the brands we have under them. And so it's just easy. You could just collect things from the second-hand market. From the first-hand market, you could just, if you're a tailor, you could put things together and just go and put it up on Shop Zetu, and you have a target audience, just like that. So then how do we do UX right so that business is coming? So how we've divided this talk is into two. So we have UX for why UX is foundational for business strategy, and then how to bring in UX into your business strategy. So the second part is gonna be handled by Rajay, who's my co-organizer. And the first part is me, and I'm going to try to bring in a local example, that's M-Pesa. You probably expected this because M-Pesa is pretty popular. So I'm going to bring in what they've done with UX to ensure the business is successful, because it's quite successful, right? So what's the story of M-Pesa? So M-Pesa started about in 2006, and it launched fully in 2007. But in 2006, there was tests going on in a city here called Thika. Thika is like right about the outskirts of Nairobi. Yeah, it's like an hour from CBD. And what they did is initially they just wanted to bring in financial inclusion. So M-Pesa was initially meant to be disburse and collect microfinance loans, right? But then they noticed that guys were using it for peer-to-peer sending of money. So what happened is that they developed a primary persona, who's someone living in the city trying to send money to their parents in the rural area. But then that meant that the guys in the rural area needed a cash out joint. So like an agent service where I could go there and get actual cash. So then they've invested in that, and they have around 400,000 outlets in the countries where M-Pesa operates. So to see how UX and business strategy combined for M-Pesa, we're going to go through these 7 factors that influence UX according to IDF, which is Interaction Design Foundation. They have pretty awesome courses. You should check them out. Sign up. It's inexpensive, so you could afford it for the year. I think it's about $60. Yeah, it's about 6,000 bob in Kenya. All right. So the 7 factors we are going to look at for UX are: your product has to be usable, useful, accessible, findable, valuable, credible, and desirable, right? And I know it's a lot, right? 7, Miller's law. It's hard to remember. We can only remember 7 minus 2 or plus 2. So then I came up with an acronym, or maybe it's not, and it's Unfound Very Capable Developers, U2. Yeah, I know. I really wasn't any more creative. So A is for accessible, F is for findable, D is for valuable, C is for credible, D is for desirable, U2 is for usable and useful, right? And then there's a second one there, which is pretty useless, because who's gonna remember that, right? Yeah, so let's get right into it, and we have useful and usable. So for M-Pesa, because of this context of someone sending money, peer-to-peer sending of money, that proved to be very useful and something that people actually needed. So what happens now is that M-Pesa moves 15 million Kenya shillings in a minute. And for context, that's 150,000, around $150,000 in a minute. M-Pesa also disburses 2 mobile loans in a second. So M-Pesa also has like a loan, you can borrow quick loans. and it's called Mshwari. And they disburse that 2 mobile loans in a second. And this is just to tell you how people need these services. So your product needs to address a need. So your product needs to end up being useful. So if you build that into your product, the high chance it's gonna succeed. So we're also going to go to the next step, that's usable. So in 5 direct steps, I can send you money, right? Well, I won't because Corona 2020, the whole mess, but you guys get it. So we have send money, and then I enter your phone number, and I enter the amount, maybe 500 shillings. That's about $5. Enter the PIN number, which is secret, and then they have this service where once I've done entering all that, it can confirm since I put in the number. Did you want to send the money to Rajesha? Because what happens is for you to be registered on M-Pesa, you have to use your original ID. So then they know whose number this ID is linked to. So I'll see, oh yeah, it is Rajay that I do want to send money to. And then I click on yes, or I cancel. So you can see how usable it is. Another thing I'd want us to notice is see how direct and simply the functions are labeled. Send money. There's no big words. It's just send money. And then there's withdraw cash. That's when you're at an agent. There's buy airtime. How direct could it get? There's pay a bill. There's ATM withdrawal. There's my account, which is where you can check your balances and stuff. So your product needs to be so easily it needs to be easy to maneuver. Like anyone of any age, anywhere should be able to use the product. And that way you get a bigger target audience. So you go to the next point, which is findable. Findable is that M-Pesa lives on the SIM card right now because it runs on the Safaricom mobile network. So which means that if it lives on my SIM card, my grandmother could use it. And my grandmother probably has like this phone. Like it's a feature phone. So it's not Android, it's not Apple, it's not the fancy stuff. It's just a simple phone. But then since I have a Safaricom line, I could access M-Pesa. And that way it's very findable. And for other products, so let's say you're coming up with a business, how do you make sure your product is findable? Is very easy. Like identify your target market. Where are they the most? Just start from there. Yeah. And 2 examples on this factor would be Eneza Education and WeFarm. So Eneza Education is an edtech company here locally. And what Eneza does is that it provides syllabus content to kids in school, right? So what that means is that, like right now where there's Corona, guys are still at home, kids can still study even if they don't have access to the internet. As you can see there, to join Eneza, you just dial *291#. What that is we call it a USSD here, unstructured something. Sorry, I'm gonna explain that better later, but yeah, you could also Google it. But yeah, that's *291#. So you're able to, there's a bunch of options, and then you select one, you register, and then you register to the service just like that. And then now what they do is they deliver content to you via SMS. So a kid will just look at their mom's phone and have access to a teacher, and they'll also have access to content even when they don't have the internet, which is pretty amazing. They move about 2 million messages on their learning platforms in a day, which is like pretty cool, right? Then we have WeFarm, which is another really amazing service. So WeFarm is a peer-to-peer sharing of knowledge among smallholder farmers. So what that does is a farmer so we have a city called Nakuru, right? Which is out of Nairobi, of course. So a farmer in Nakuru could ask, what is the price of, let's say, garlic? What is the price of garlic? A kg of garlic in Nairobi. And they could just ask on their feature phone and they'll get a response. So what WeFarm has done is that it's like plenty of WhatsApp groups, but on a feature phone. So you could be on an onion group and get messages and ask questions and get responses. Another really cool thing that WeFarm has done is that their AI technology understands nuances in dialect and literacy. So you don't have to be educated to ask a question, right? Which sometimes is usually the case now for our farmers. Not all of them are very educated, right? So the tech has that ability. Another really cool thing is NLP. They are natural language processing models. They understand for the first time Kiswahili, Luganda, and Runyankore. That means that if I ask my question in Swahili, I'm going to get a response. The system is going to understand. So I think that's amazing. Yeah. So again, that's findable. So the other three are credible, desirable, and accessible. So for credible, M-Pesa, as we said, it operates on Safaricom mobile network. The thing is, we're dealing with money. So I'm not about to give my money to just anyone, right? So again, you need to understand your product and the behavior and the psychology around your product. So then it was very easy for M-Pesa to ride on Safaricom and for guys to pick it up quickly because it's Safaricom. Safaricom is a mobile network that provides quality services here. So it's easy to be like, oh, Safaricom has got this, right? So how then do you do that for a business? How do you ensure there's credibility for your product? You could partner with you could partner with guys who like have built their name up. You could partner with, this is actually how influencer marketing grew, because someone credible is talking about your product. So it brings about the effect of trust, right? So for desirable, which is a D, so, it's simple and direct, which is M-Pesa now. So it's the steps are very simple and direct, which limits the cognitive load. You saw how they're numbered and how they're named. Send money, withdraw cash. It's very simple and direct. So depending on who you ask, it's very desirable, right? But M-Pesa, since it lives on this, sometimes you can also get it like on your other phone, but I want to particularly focus on this. Since it lives on this, it doesn't particularly have an interface, right? So if we're talking desirable, another cool local example would be CBA Loop, which came about 2018, I'm not pretty sure, but maybe 2-3 years ago, if not more. And what Loop did, it was so well done that it appealed to the youth, and that is who they were looking for anyway, right? So Loop looks really good. The options are really cool. It helps with budgeting. You can ask for loans. You could ask for up to 3 million Kenyan bob for the loan. And just the whole interface is well thought through. And the colors are bright. It just makes you feel like, yeah, I'm using an elite product. So, and that's what the youth want, right? We like pretty things that work, but pretty does help, right? All right. So we go to accessible, which is how do you build your product with the people of disability to some respect in mind? So whether someone is visually impaired, whether they have hearing loss, or maybe it's a learning impairment, how do you build with them in mind? And don't think, oh, it's a small percentage, let's not bother. You should really, because when you build for accessibility, you build for simplicity by default, and that is amazing. So for M-Pesa, we actually have some visually impaired persons who are registered as agent in the agent network. That means that I could walk to an M-Pesa agent and a blind person could serve me, and they know how to do it because the steps are so simple. They also have like software that reads out the instructions on their phone. They've mastered the keypad. So M-Pesa is continuously working on making that easy for both the person who's serving, the person who's also using. So, and I think that's really cool. And this is an ongoing debate in Kenya, like how accessible is M-Pesa. So we'll see what also keeps coming up. I think they have USSD again. So that's like *231# that is easily usable for visually impaired persons. Yeah. So keep that in mind. Make your product as accessible as you possibly can. And last factor here is valuable, which is I felt that this is very mighty because it's very holistic, right? So your product should be able to deliver value in one way or another. It should deliver value to the user, to the business, and even the society at large. So let's look at some stats that clearly show you how M-Pesa has been valuable to the Kenyan economy and the Kenyan society at large. So if we remove the money, right, all the money that M-Pesa gives to Safaricom, what other value has M-Pesa given Safaricom? Product stickiness, because even if, like, let's say I'm using another mobile network, I will probably want to have an M-Pesa, a Safaricom line, just so that I could access M-Pesa. I could be able to send someone money. I could be able to access money when someone sends it to me. So then it gives Safaricom as a product stickiness, which is gold, right? So you want to think about such things when you're building your product. In 2018, 31.2% Safaricom revenues were from M-Pesa, and that is wild. And that was about, I think that was 71 or 72.99 billion shillings, which is massive, right? Yes, but you can see that if your product is truly valuable, it also brings massive value to your business, and those are things that UXers we should not forget, right? And then we also have by tracking transactional behavior. This is M-Pesa. Fuliza, which is an overdraft service, was born about in 2018. Yeah, and I think it got really popular 2019 and 2020. So what happens is, because they have so much data of how we move money around, they saw that guys needed this service and they created it. And this service alone moved 45 billion shillings in 3 months as of May 2018. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. So if you use your data, understand it, you can see what other services that people might be needing that you're not already providing. The fourth point there is financial inclusion. So clearly it goes without saying, M-Pesa has improved our financial inclusion from 27 to 83%, which is more than triple, guys. Like, that's wild. In that's should be 13 years, I think. Yeah. In 2018, an equivalent of 91% of Kenya's GDP was moved through mobile platforms. Again, wild, very wild, right? So this just goes to show you, if your product is truly valuable, if you build in value in your product, you will really truly move things. And then your product also has to work almost 99.9% of the time. That's like all the time. Yeah. So you have to have a really high uptime. Otherwise, it becomes, it removes the emotional buying from the user, and it also affects the business. So here I had an example where if we have 30 minutes of downtime, it means if I am in a restaurant with someone on a date and I'm about to make my payment and I didn't carry any cards or no bank, just my phone, and M-Pesa is down, I'll get very embarrassed because, yeah, I'm not going to be able to make payments. And have you been embarrassed, like, through, like, financial embarrassment? 10 out of 10 would not recommend it. So no, so you need, if that happens to me, I'm going to be like, ooh, next time I go out on a date or I go out to the restaurant, I'm definitely going to carry my cards, and then you start losing users like that. So your product actually needs to work. Now, what does downtime mean for M-Pesa? For M-Pesa, since it's moving 15 million shillings in a minute, what that means is that in 30 minutes, about $4.5 million, they lose out profits on the transactions of moving that amount of money in just 30 minutes. Like, that is how insane this is, right? So you need to get your product working, right? So imagine such, whenever there's a downtime, it actually goes into the newspapers down here. So what happens is, if it's a downtime, and M-Pesa is having like a scheduled maintenance, they're going to say, oh, we are off at, it's not, our services won't be available from this time to this time. It goes to the news. So imagine being so important and your product just lives on the same card that we can see down here. So that is the kind of value that I'm talking about. You need to think about value for our product, value for our businesses that we are starting around this time. All right. So when knowing all this, how do you not tell me UX is not everything? UX is everything. So UX everything, from the marketing, sales, everything, customer support, everything, because UX is indeed everything. So for the next part, which is how to integrate UX with business strategy, Rajay is gonna take us on. Rajay, are you ready?
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Hey. Yeah.
All right, so will you be sharing your screen or shall I do it?
Okay, do you want me to share it? Okay, let me share it for you. All right.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, thanks so much, Injury, for giving that really awesome breakdown about really how game-changing M-Pesa has been for financial inclusion in Kenya. And guys, Injury is a really amazing. She's just she's really transformed and like shaped the UX community in Nairobi. So yeah, don't worry, you haven't. This is not the last you've heard from her. She'll be back right after my section. Cool. So I'm going to talk about how we can integrate UX and business strategy together, and I'll do that for about the next 15 to 20 minutes. The reason I think this is something that's really important to talk about is because I think, like many of you in organizations, the business side of things and the UX side of things are kind of divorced from each other. It's sometimes difficult to communicate and align on the right priorities. Sometimes, decisions made on the business side and decisions made on the UX side might clash and actually impede on each other's progress. And business design is it's a new field, it's growing. There's lots of different ways to define things. There's lots of different ways to explain how you can bring certain concepts in. So obviously you can't talk about everything, but we're just going to talk about what we've learned working in the Kenyan context. And I'll bring in some great, amazing examples from the transport industry, from electricity, even expanding to users who cannot afford much. So without further ado, I'll start off with the first point. Andrew, you can go. Thanks. So the first idea is about how we can reframe business goals to UX goals. Yeah, you can move to the next slide. Thanks. All right, so normally in businesses, I think many of you might have heard this kind of language, like we need to increase signups by 15%. We want to increase retention by 30%, or we want to, engagement. So many of these business goals, well, there's nothing wrong with them. They're obviously great things to have. What kind of business doesn't want to grow, right? And then these goals are usually around the topics of adoption, retention, engagement, satisfaction, and efficiency. But the issue with this is these goals are often abstract and they don't really tell you about the user's experience. So, it's not like I'm waking up every day thinking, I'm going to sign up to these new things. I'm going to use this platform more. I'm thinking about the product and how it's going to help me in my life. So a way to reframe an example like this is, and we can move to the next slide. Instead of increasing retention, we can think of it as by getting more users to continue using our product, how will we have improved lives? And I think Njeri pointed out a great example to highlight this with the banking example, which appealed to young users. So instead of them thinking, let's just drive marketing strategies and let's force our existing product on them, they really went and thought, what kind of product can we build to make this appeal to the younger generation? So that's and another example is with cutting costs. You really need to be clear about what outcome you're trying to get out of the activity that you're doing. So if you want to cut costs, let's say we want to cut costs by reducing calls to the customer service team because we've improved the onboarding experience, which is something that we've actually been working on at Africa Stocking. We've tried to make everything very self-explanatory so that users don't have to keep calling the customer service team, and just make it much easier. So yes, the next point is that business models can be designed. And the next slide, please. So the idea of this is that business models usually trickle down to the user's experience. And I don't know about you, I despise seeing ads. Like I'm trying to go look for some content, maybe read up on something, and then my whole screen is just bombarded by ads and different things. And then, sometimes I can't even focus on what I'm trying to do. And, that's just an example of how business models actually impeding the user experience. And, there are different ways around generating revenue. Medium and the New Yorker now are using metered paywalls where you can you can still get the same content. And then when you know you're going to use that content continuously, then you can pay for a subscription. We can move on to the next slide. Thanks. So yeah, I'm actually, during this pandemic, we're all at home. We're all, trying to find things to do with our time. And I can imagine that a lot of you look like this guy in this picture here with the smiley face, because many of us are watching. And one way of how this is, a good business model for the user experience is the fact that I don't have to pay for every single film and show that I watch, but I can pay a $10 a month subscription and I can choose anything and I have the freedom to do it. And now going on to a more local example, there's a solar energy company called Copper Solar, which is actually working to expand access to electricity among even the most underserved populations in rural areas in Kenya. And, getting solar products and, solar panels is not cheap, but what they've done is that they've made it very affordable, but they also let the users pay the equivalent of about 50 cents every day for about until they actually own the product. And during that time, they don't have to use kerosene, so it's healthier. They get the electricity that they need. Luckily, it's Nairobi, and luckily Kenya is a pretty sunny place usually. And yeah, it just goes to show how they really thought from the user's perspective. Like these people cannot afford a lot. They can't afford to make long-term investments, and so they broke these manageable chunks. So the next point that I'll talk about is how we can prototype and test to inform business strategy. So, as designers, we all have this very experimental mindset. We want to test things, and every business needs to have its assumptions validated for it to be successful. And the way you can test it, you can test how the value proposition, how pricing models, how the financial model all works together, because you need them to work together in harmony for a business to be successful. And this points to the desirability of a product, which is the value proposition. Do people like what you have to offer? The viability, which is it cost effective? Are people willing to pay the price that you want? The feasibility, which is, can it scale? Do you have the right tech to do it? And there's different ways you can do it. You can prototype with a business model canvas. You can do these sort of like lemonade stand prototypes where you go out into the public and try to communicate your value proposition and just talk to people. And one thing that we've actually done at a startup called Decoded, where I also work, is so Decoded actually tries to support technology communities and create a bigger tech community and to support startups as well. So we actually had a co-working space pre-pandemic. And what we wanted to test out was different ways of packaging the experience. Do users want to pay for a whole month? Do they want to pay for a week? Do they want to pay for a certain number of hours? So what we noticed actually was that some users actually just wanted to use the space so that they could have meetings in the meeting room, or so that they could carry out interviews. And so that just kind of opened up this new package that we could try just from this sort of prototyping model, and it became pretty successful. And yeah, so the last point that I'll talk about is how user research can unlock new business opportunities. So again, as designers, we're always talking to our users, trying to understand them, trying to see how they're using our product, and often trying to think of when you discover how a user uses a product in an unintended way, it can open up a whole new business for you. So we can just move to the next slide. And we can actually move from thinking about a problem and where we should be to an opportunity and where we could be. And I'll bring in another example from where I work. So I work at Africa Stocking, and like Njuri explained, we make APIs for payments and communications. So customers can effectively send out bulk text, and they can also, create call centers. They can send airtime. They can disperse payments. And so from Africa Stocking, observing how the users have built on this infrastructure to create their own apps, we've noticed that they noticed that a lot of people were making customer engagement solutions. And so what they also noticed that not every business had developed the developer resources to build using the APIs. So they actually created a startup called Integra that gives you this plug and play solution, and now that startup is doing really well. Another example is how they noticed that some insurance companies and some banks were actually wanted to use these APIs to remind people about loan or debt collection. And so they created another startup where you could easily create these recordings to ask for loans or to remind people. And so that's just an example of how these new sort of businesses can spring out of this kind of user research. So now we can move to the next example. And this is actually one of my favorite examples. I love talking about issues related to transport. And I feel like Africa in general, and in Kenya, it's just such a unique context because we don't have efficient public transport like in Europe. It's not like we have the best roads here. So if you look at this picture, actually, I shouldn't have even said before because this is kind of still the issue. Maybe not now during the pandemic, but traffic in Nairobi is just horrendous. Like, it can be the most frustrating things in the world. You'll just be sitting in the heat, sitting in your car for hours on the same road. And the way people get around is through matatus, which are like minibuses. They can also get around via motorbikes. So with the motorbikes, it has a reputation of being quite unsafe, quite chaotic, and it's actually sometimes a couple of deaths happen every day or every week because of these kind of accidents. And so what some amazing companies have done is that they've created a whole network of trained drivers in which you can call them up just like an Uber. So I can open up the app, request a ride, and it will, a rider will come and pick me up and take me to work. And actually, I never even considered sitting on a motorbike because I always thought it was dangerous. And then when I tried this app, it just gave this whole feeling of trust. The drivers are trained. They come with an extra helmet. They even got to a point where users were complaining that they didn't want to use a helmet that someone else has been using just before. So what they did was they got the drivers to then carry hairnets. And then, the next, they've actually also, they've really innovated since then. Since the pandemic began, they knew that they had this whole network of drivers, and now they're using this network of drivers to pick up and deliver food and packages. They even let you share money amongst each other, which is just amazing. And then the example to the right is the company called Swivel. So they've been pretty successful in Cairo, and they are essentially a ride-hailing app for minibuses. And so you just have to find out which routes that they go along to. You go to their stop. It's a lot less expensive than calling a regular cab or an Uber. And it just brings more regularity to the whole chaos of things, because sometimes the matatus are kind of unreliable. Their routes are maybe not the most optimal. So you would have to go all the way to the center of town and then go in another direction just to get home. and yeah, there are definitely some other similar services in other parts of the world, like other parts of Asia. Um, and yeah, the apart from a few hiccups with adoption in Nairobi, they've been, there is a need for this sort of thing. And yeah, I'm just going to close off on this last point, which is that strategy and business strategy is not only for businesses. We can also apply it to universities. We can apply it to NGOs, to charities, because all of these have an aspect of you have users, and you also have money coming in and out, and you have to be concerned about how much you're spending and whether that spending is actually worthwhile. So thanks, everyone. I'm going to hand it over back to Njuri, and I hope you enjoyed that section.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rajay. I really hope we can begin to see how that breakdown shows that UX and business strategy are more like sisters of the same mom, and not like business strategy being the mom and then like UX being the baby, right? So that was a nice analogy. Yeah. So to finish this, we thought that we would say as UXers, since we are the ones talking to users, we are the ones making sense of the data and understanding everything. We need to understand that the responsibility of innovation lies with us. It's upon us as a UXer in a project to think through the business design entirely as well. Yeah, so you can see there, this is really the best speak I could get. You know how dogs are empathetic, they just hug you when you come back home, and then they're also like, superheroes. So yeah, make sense of the data, listen to your users, and then design the business. So to finish, here's another local example that we like. So in Nairobi before COVID, on a Thursday evening, Friday evening, you would just pick up your friends, go to a spot like the Alchemist in Westlands, and you guys just have a drink or something. So at the Alchemist, there's this service mulberry cocktails. And what's happening is that since no one's going to the clubs anymore, no one's going to like hang out and stuff, they decided to bring this service to our homes. So they created Mulberry to Go, another example of how you could innovate for your business around this time. So Mulberry to Go means that I could order a cocktail and get it in a bottle. I actually still have the bottle. And then what they did is that it's so presentable, it's so well done, it's so thoughtful. Like, look at this message that says, "Dear Gabiga, Mulberry cocktails are the gift you give to yourself because we miss you," right? And here is, I still have that because it's also like very well, just thoughtful. You feel missed, right? So you stay with the business. And then on the far right, you can see that these are some of the ingredients they added in an envelope, which I thought was also pretty fantastic. So some lemons, some chilies, and stuff to hold it together in your glass. Like, they've got everything to the T. And their messages, their promotional messages on WhatsApp are also like pretty cool. So whenever we have a national holiday, we'll be like, hey, you could have your favorite rum and something on this day that we celebrate independence or something like that. And I think that's pretty cool. And that's another way that businesses can think through the business aspect of how do we make money? How do we get emotional buy-in so that we stay sustainable throughout this time? Just think through the experience of the user. All right, so that's said and done. We hope that we've convinced you that UX and business really truly go together. And this is Q&A time. Yeah, and that's how you could reach us. We have a Medium blog where we put up articles that explain the entire UX process very, very quickly, very short, quick articles. You can also join us on Meetup. That's our email for the community. These are also our personal emails, and I'm ready for questions.
Yeah, we're waiting for some questions to come in. A lot of positive feedback, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I seem unable to post on. So if you can hear me, we're taking questions now for Jerry and Rajay. Can you post those down in the chat, and we'll pick them off. So there should be plenty of questions about doing business in Africa, in Kenya specifically, innovation. There's so much going on, especially with mobile, I feel, in Kenya. There's a question coming in. Do you see it, Najiri? You want to pick that one off? It's I'm curious how you and your team validated the need for the app before investing time and money in building it, or did you cover it and I missed it? This is a question from Julie Saunders, I believe. Oh no, that was Jess Golding asking that. Thank you, Julie.
Okay.
So the question is for you, Najiri. Did you see that?
Sorry.
Oh, the question is.
No, I didn't see it.
Okay, yeah, I'll repeat the question for you. It's somebody's curious how you and your team validated the need for the app before investing time and money in building it.
Which app are we talking about? Is it the one that Rajay spoke about?
I wonder if she was referring to M-Pesa.
She might have been referring to, yes, exactly. Well, if one of you can just field that.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Rajay, take it up.
Yeah, so actually we weren't the ones that built M-Pesa. This is, just one of the really, yeah, this is one of the really just like famous within Kenya examples of how, simple app has, or simple sort of platform has allowed for financial inclusion across Kenya, and it's shaped many other countries as well. Yeah. So yeah, if we, we'll do some research on that question and we can get back to you.
Okay. Another question is, have you had to make the choice between designing for hybrid, web apps or native mobile, and what influenced that decision?
Oh, okay. So for that, usually the more popular one here is Android. So if you're going for a mobile app, and maybe you want to reach the masses, Android would be best. However, if let's say your main users are going to be on the web platforms also work. So progressive web apps that I can also easily access on my mobile phone, those also work. Yeah.
Right.
So sorry, just to address the M-Pesa one, I thought that guys are asking about the Africa Stocking example, so that's where we work. But M-Pesa is not by us, it's by Safaricom. And how they validated the need is that they went to Sika sometime in 2006 and just a group, they picked a target group to test with. And so what happens is that they were testing actually for one use case, which is disbursing of loans and like repayment. And then sending money was just like an extra feature, and that they realized that guys are using more than what they intended the platform for. Yeah. So collect data.
Right. Kind of like Slack was an accident a little bit.
Oh, really? I should read on
Apparently, that. Yeah. I think Jake will have something to say about that potentially later. Question from Mega Singal. Have you noticed any particular changes in user behavior after COVID started? In other words, has COVID impacted usage?
Oh, okay. So I suppose this is for M-Pesa as well. So I don't have the data for that because like it just happened, but I can find that out for you. However, my gut feeling would be that it's happening a bit more. They're probably moving a bit more money because people are not going around, people are not, we're still in our homes. And what's happening these days is that what the banks have done, they've made it free to move money from your bank to your phone because they're trying to support the idea of you staying at home. So whenever there's a transaction from your bank to your phone, you get a message from Safaricom that says, remember to stay home. When you go to the store, remember not to use cash, so use more M-Pesa. So definitely, I would say they're probably seeing more money moving through the platform.
Probably.
At this time.
Yeah. I can even speak for Africa Stocking on that because, of course, many business operations have been affected, and many businesses were using us as a communication platform to, reach out to all of their customers, through SMS and calls and everything. So they actually started using the APIs more for a while, even because they had to send out these mass communication campaigns to communicate with their businesses.
Yeah, I've been waiting here in Europe for mobile payments to explode in this period, and it hasn't really happened. We have contactless credit cards, right, with a microchip, and all they did in France, for example, was just up the amount that you could do with that kind of payment. There's a question for Rajay about specific examples of reframing business goals as UX goals.
Mm-hmm. So I think the one I spoke about was more on retention, but I think most of the reframes would be like, even if it's about sign up, we want 15% more users to sign up to our platform. It's about thinking, by having these extra users on our platform, how have we improved their experience, or how have we, catered to, a larger portion of people with more needs to be able to use this platform, rather than just driving the same kind of product. Another goal is to reduce costs. If we want to reduce cost by X% by reducing the number of calls that are given to the customer success team, because that obviously costs money and resources to respond to all of that. So by automating processes and making things easier, it actually ties into that business goal.
There are a couple questions that I'll regroup together. Thank you for that answer. They're all sort of around the challenge of getting buy-in for UX, and people are wondering whether those challenges exist for you as well. From executives, for example, at clients, getting budget for research, for example, as opposed to just please design it for me, right? The fame make it look like Apple, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so that happens a lot here. The context is a client, let's say it's not from work, a client will be like, oh, I get you're a UX designer, yeah. I want Uber for this, and I want Airbnb for that,
Sure.
And the problem is to convince them that for us to do something that users need, we actually need to invest in research. And the problem is, because UX is still sort of picking up, that's a conversation. They'll be like, oh, you said research is gonna take how long? Why don't we just start, designing? Like, just jump onto Figma and just cook something together. And it's just always a conversation. So in the context of a workplace, UXers have really taken that upon themselves. Like, it's for UXers to sell design, because our leadership teams is also just learning about UX. They're also just learning about how important experience is when it comes to their entire business. So yes, it's still a fight. However, we are moving very fast, and strangely, especially in this time. Yeah.
Cool. What about you, Rajay? Same experience?
Yeah, pretty much. I think definitely the research, trying to emphasize the importance of research and the time and thinking that goes into it is really, really difficult. I think initially, especially as you're showing what UX can do, the main output that they see at the end of it is wireframes, and it's in wireframes or designs, and they might not be some of the flashiest outputs, but there's so much thought that has gone into them. So it's just, yeah, but it's been really positive, like just trying to communicate the importance of it, and people in Nairobi are very receptive. At the end of the day, everyone just wants to make sure that you're making the right decisions. So.
Good. Well, listen, I'd like to thank you both very much for joining us today from Nairobi. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you virtually.